So that clock must be wrong. Okay, done deal. Okay, everyone, we'll get started in about 30 seconds, maybe about 45 seconds, we'll get started. So if everyone could have your seat, and all those that are providing statements, just stand behind me. And we will ask that all media personnel, if you could hold your questions until the last statement is provided, we would really appreciate that. What we will do is we will open it up for questions once the last statement is provided. Okay, I have 2 o'clock. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Glynn County. We would like to thank everyone for sharing their time with us this afternoon. Today, we will share with you a summary of one of our recent initiatives here in Glynn County. Operation Coastal Flood was a collaborative effort amongst many law enforcement partners, including the U.S. Marshals Service, Glynn County District Attorney's Office, Assistant United States Attorney's Office, Brunswick Police Department, Glynn County Police Department, Glynn County Sheriff's Office, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. This collaborative effort was done to facilitate the arrest of numerous habitual offenders and to discourage the rise in violent crime in Glynn County, Georgia. At this time, we will begin the press conference with comments from the Glynn County Manager, Mr. William Fallon.
Okay, thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone. I'd like to start off, I spent 27 years with the U.S. Marshal Service around the country, different duty stations. Fantastic agency. In fact, back in 2008, I had the opportunity to run a national operation called Operation Falcon, where we targeted violent offenders around the country and actually internationally. The main focus of the operation back then was unregistered sex offenders. And so during that operation in June of 2008, during 1 week, we arrested over 19,000 people nationwide, over 10,000 sex offenders, over 160 that were wanted for murder, took over 400 guns off the streets. So I certainly knew what the Marshal Service was capable of. Early on in my position here as Glynn County Manager, I met with Chief Batiste back in May, and we had some conversations about violent crime and what we could do to potentially combat some of that violent crime that was happening throughout Glynn County. So we talked about what the Marshal Service could do. And so I reached out to my friends from Marshal Service Headquarters. I then talked to Jim Joyner, who's the commander of the Southeast Regional Fugitive Task Force out of Atlanta, which covers this area as well, and talked about what exactly the Marshal Service could do to help us work on combating violent crime. The very next day, Paul Gatlin, who's the supervisory inspector for the task force, was in our office. And so we met with Paul and we talked about exactly what we could do to focus on some of these violent offenders that we knew that were out there and had outstanding warrants. So over the course of the next couple of months, the Marshal Service took they worked with us, they worked with the Sheriff's Office, they worked with Brunswick PD, and they identified over 600 outstanding warrants that were out there. They brought it back to their office in Savannah, and they had their research specialists start looking at those warrants to figure out exactly who we should target. They came back with 63 targets, and I'm going to let Chief Batiste talk a little bit more about the numbers and the impact. But the focus of the Operation Coastal Flood was these 63 offenders that we felt were causing a lot of the violent crime here in Glynn County. And so they worked together with all the partner agencies to put the operation together. They came in force September 12th. The Marshal Service actually brought in over 25 people from around the state as part of their task force. Put them up here for the week. We did some training. Marshal Lyons came in, swore in all of our folks as special Deputy U.S. Marshals for the week for the operation, and the event was very, very successful. So it really shows what we can do as a community working together with all the partner agencies to try and tackle some of those common goals that we have, and certainly violent crime is about the top. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Marshal Lyons, and certainly, Marshal, really appreciate all the efforts that the Marshal Service put into this, and certainly the resources that they put towards Glynn County. Marshal?
Good afternoon. I am David Lyons, Marshal of the United States Marshal's Office, Southern District of Georgia. This operation was the epitome of law enforcement cooperation. This is what can happen when state, local, and federal agencies come together with one common goal of getting a bunch of bad guys off the street and making Glynn County safer for the people that live here. And that's what happened. Very pleased with the results, very happy to have been a part of this. And I want to take just a minute and say a special thank you for all of those men and women that were responsible for putting this operation together and that left their homes and families and went out on the streets. Most of them were volunteers to make this happen. So big thank you to all you guys and gals. Thank y'all.
Pull it down, Marshall. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Jacques Batiste. I'm the Chief of Police for Glynn County Police Department. First and most importantly, thank you for being here today. Today, we're pleased to highlight the success of one of our most recent law enforcement collaborations, Operation Coastal Flood. Our overarching goal for the citizens of Glynn County includes making this area a safe place for our residents and our visitors to live in. Operation Coastal Flood was done to facilitate the arrest of numerous habitual offenders and to discourage the rise in violent crime in Glynn County, Georgia. This was truly a partnership effort, which included the U.S. Marshal Service, Southeast Regional Fugitive Task Force, the Glynn County Sheriff's Office, the Brunswick Police Department, the Glynn County District Attorney's Office, U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And I would be remiss also if I did not mention the Glynn County Fire Department that played a key role as well. Many more local agencies assigned to the Southeast Regional Task Force were also part of this, and I wish to offer them special thanks as well as to the men and the women of Glynn County Police Department, with whom I am extremely proud of and continue to be proud of each and every day of service. During Operation Coastal Flood, we were able to take over 30 fugitives off the street. There were 30 physical arrests made between the dates of September 14th and September 16th. These offenders, who were all involved in violent crimes, range from individuals who committed aggravated assaults, sexual assaults, crimes against children, homicides, etc. Thanks to our partnership, these efforts continued beyond last week. Earlier this week, with an additional 5 arrests to add to that number, were made in Florida, bringing our total to 35 total taken off the streets in arrest. We are very serious about addressing violent crimes, and some of the trends remind us of the importance to do so. For instance, since January, the Glynn County Police Department has recovered 96 weapons, and of those recovered, 18 were stolen. In addition, there are approximately 40 documented incidents of gang-related activities. This is a great concern for us, and collaborative efforts like Operation Coastal Flood will help us to address this and many other violent crime-related incidents in the future. This is just one of the many reasons we remain focused on addressing outstanding warrants in the area. On average, we can have as many as 170 outstanding warrants for Glynn County Police Department alone, and well over that for the entire county, which is why this partnership is important and we value it. In the warrants associated with the efforts, the U.S. Marshal Service arrested Antonio Duncan, for example, for the offense of murder at the local Bamboo Lounge, a violent crime that took place several months ago. The Glynn County Police Department assisted the City of Brunswick Police in this matter, which meant one less violent crime offender is off the streets today as a result. This is just one example. As stated in the press release, although there have been many instances of successful collaborative partnerships with these agencies in the past, our goal is to reinvigorate these partnerships and become even more focused on leveraging our relationships in ways that will address all violent crimes. This is just the beginning, and we will continue to develop partnerships that help us address violent crimes in Glynn County, specifically in the areas of gang violence, sexual assaults, violence against children, robbery, and other affiliated violent crimes. Again, in closing, I want to thank you all for the partners who have participated in this effort, including the support we received from the county manager, Mr. Fallon, and members of the Board of the Commissioners, some who are seated here today with you. And special thanks to the men and women of the Glynn County Police Department and mostly the U.S. Marshal Service Southeast Regional Task Force. Thank you.
We'll put it down a little bit more, Chief. I'm Neil Jumpin, Sheriff of Glynn County. First, Chief Lyons, thank you, Chief. Over 20 years ago, you were a chief. Still a chief and a good friend. To our commissioners for your support and all that you do to help public safety in Glynn County, we appreciate that. To the men standing behind me, the effort that we did that came out, and for the marshals to come in and do their job, it was amazing, and we thank you. The unsung heroes that I want to speak of is the men and women of the Glynn County Detention Center who volunteered their time off to support the efforts of the United States Marshals Task Force. Despite the personal shortage of the Glynn County Detention Center, these men and women worked around the clock to receive, process, classify, and house 88 detainees that were either the result of Operation Coastal Flood or a part of the normal arrest activities within Glynn County. Not only processed, but they had several incidents that they all had to handle at that time, with some of our officers getting injured. The men and women of our intake process are the unsung heroes of the Sheriff's Office. I'm highly appreciative of their day-to-day activities, as they are always on guard to not only look out for the safety and security of the detainees, but also of the officers who transport these individuals to the detention center. We at the Glynn County Sheriff's Office will always continue to serve the citizens of Glynn County by being professional and officially maintaining peace, protecting life, and protecting property, and providing service to our Glynn County community and the state of Georgia. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will be willing to answer any questions that any representatives from the media may have. And if you guys have any questions, we will bring up the individuals you may have the question for. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, was there any particular time of day these arrests were made? Was it early morning hours or just?
It started in the early morning hours. Yes, sir. All right. Well, if there are no further questions, we do have the press release over to my right, your left. Please feel free to pick up one. Those that are on our media distribution list, we will send out that copy electronically. But if there are no further questions, thank everyone for coming here, as well as thanking all the participants. Anyone else wants to say anything? All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Sir?
Zero.